I'm exposing you as a liar video.
So I want to talk about Jimmy Snow's video. Gabby, Hanna, Rachel Oates, and me. I know I'm late to the party on this one, but I'm still upset about it, and I want to scream out into the void that is YouTube. And if anybody comes across this and they are also upset about it, my comment section's the safe place to talk about it. And I won't turn off my comments just because you disagree with me, because I'm not Jimmy. And if you want to criticize my art too, go right on ahead. I'm not Gabby Hanna. I could take criticism. If you're thinking right now,
your audio quality is so bad, it's so awful,
please leave a comment down below. Because I have an auditory processing disorder, so it's hard for me to tell how bad my audio is. So any tips and tricks that you can give me would be A+. I would much appreciate them. So I would like to start out talking about how he got mad at his fans. It's extremely wrong of him to be like, you didn't come at me the way I would want you to come at me, therefore you don't deserve an answer. These fans were clearly upset, and I'm not saying it was right for them to come and ask him that way, but what I am saying is how he responded to it, acting like they don't deserve an answer at all because of how they came at him, is wrong. He could have just wrote back to them, it's like,
you could have asked nicer. I'm just working on thinking about how to address this situation.
He could have came at it with a place of kindness. I would also like to mention that he talks about how he has staff who watches his videos, but no one on the staff told him this should not be it. My question is, no one told him that, like,
this video makes you look so bad?
Like, 0 people. In the same exact vein, he talks about how he knows so much about Rachel, and if he really wanted to hurt her, he could if he wanted to, but that's not a thinly veiled threat. No one on his staff was like,
Wait, that needs to be cut from the video.
Because even if you say it's not a thinly veiled threat, when you leave stuff like that in, it is a thinly veiled threat. Whether you want them to take it that way or not, because if it wasn't a thinly veiled threat, it wouldn't be in the video at all. He also talks about how he's friends with people in the hopes to change them. This is an extremely toxic thing to do. You should never get into any relationship, whether that be friendship or physical relationships, in the hopes of trying to change somebody. I'm not saying never be friends or never be in a relationship with people who disagree with you. I don't think that that's an issue. The issue is when you have this set goal of trying to change somebody, because of that is meaning that they're not good enough and they have to change, and that's not okay. I also love how he's like, I don't like drama. I hate drama. But his whole entire YouTube career was started on drama. Him going after Girl Defined was inherently dramatic. Him going after Paul and Morgan was drama. The thing is, if you are a commentator on anybody, you're being dramatic. There was no point to doing that. I do believe people should exist who do these things because it challenges people's beliefs, but drama channels, for as much as we say we don't like dramas, we don't like drama channels aren't making up things about people like tabloids are. I think drama has been so misaligned in the recent years because of tabloids. Like, tabloids, they oftentimes spread a lot of lies, but drama, to begin with, like these drama channels, they aren't making up stories. They are commenting on the current stories that are happening. So they're not making up these stories. So them commenting on this, it is drama, but it's not exactly wrong. It's the same exact principle as Jimmy commenting on politics or Jimmy commenting on Girl Defined. It's in the same exact vein. Him failing to recognize this is disgusting and wrong. If he didn't want to be a drama channel, then he shouldn't have started out his YouTube career being a drama channel. He should have instead been a Today I Found Out type channel. One of those kind of channels, like an educational channel, because then you're not commenting on people. I also love that in the DM he sent Rachel, the first one, he basically tells Rachel, like, well, your fans go after Gabby and that's not okay. If you put that in a comment, I don't care what Jimmy says. I don't care how he justified it throughout the whole entire video. He clearly tried to justify that he wasn't telling Rachel not to post a video. But he knows as a YouTuber that a disclaimer, that even being nice to somebody isn't going to stop their fans from going after the individual you talk about. There is nothing you could do, no disclaimer, no nothing that you can do that will stop a fan base from deciding that they dislike this and they will go after somebody based off of it. There is literally nothing. And that's why disclaimers exist. Speaking of which,
Don't use this video to go after anybody I talk about in this video.
disclaimers exist because it separates us from the actions other people do. We cannot stop the actions other people do. The thing is Jimmy knows this. So the only way Rachel could have stopped her fans from never going after Gabbie was to not post the video. And he knows this. And he could feign ignorance all he wants. He could act like that is not true. That's not what I was saying. But it was what he was saying. It was clearly what he was saying. How can you read it any other way? Especially because he says, I say what I mean and I write what I mean. And it's like, okay, if you write what you mean, then you meant her not to post the video. In that same exact vein, he was like, Gabbie was already getting hate from the tweets Rachel was sending out. And I would like to dispute this because I remember at the time, because I'm actually extremely into BookTube and book reviews. So because I am extremely into that, I remember at the time and I was thinking in my head, am I correct? So I looked it up, that there were already people who had a good amount of following who were commenting on Gabby Hanna's Dandelion prior to Rachel Oates posting her review at all. My question is, was Gabby getting hate from Rachel's tweets? I don't think so, because the earliest review posted for Dandelion was October 13th, 2020, and Rachel posted her video on October 26th, 2020. So my question is, were the people who were already sending Gabby Hanna hate for Dandelion, were they at all Rachel Oates fans? Maybe there's crossover, but I don't think it was Rachel Oates tweets that were sending those people that way. And because I'm into book reviews, I would also like to talk about how I find it extremely dumb that Gabby Hanna perpetrates this myth that Rachel started the whole trend of reviewing her books. And this is untrue. It's untrue because even though Rachel was the first to start reviewing her books critically on YouTube, it was part of a trend. If it wasn't Rachel, it would have been somebody else. Because what we have to understand is, during that time on YouTube, when Rachel started to review Gabby Hanna's book critically, it was already a trend to review YouTubers' books critically. People were reviewing Onision's book, Shane Dawson's book, Jake Paul's book. It wasn't also just problematic YouTubers. They were reviewing all YouTubers' books because that was part of the trend. So if Rachel Oates never even posted her critical review, I believe that inevitably it would have happened, whether that was Rachel Oates or somebody else. And it was also probably not the only critical review that exists on YouTube. It probably was just the first standalone critical review that exists on YouTube of Gabby Hanna's book. Because if you go back and you look at the Goodread comments on Adultolescence, in 2017, some YouTubers who are booktubers were critically reviewing Gabby Hanna's poetry on Goodreads. So I'm sure in some of their wrap-ups at the time, you probably could find that they said they didn't like it and tell you exactly why they didn't like it. I think Rachel just started the trend of reviewing it individually. And him trying to express that if it was truly only critical, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But she was writing all these mean tweets, and that was the issue. Book reviews, art reviews in general, don't have to be constructive at all. Because when you put art out into the world, you have no right as the artist to tell somebody how they should feel about something. So if they hated it and they write,
I just hated it. It was awful. I wanted to throw up.
that is perfectly fine. Now, if that person said,
The author's dumb and stupid for writing it.
that is not fine. That's not okay. But if the review is just based on hating the actual piece of work, that's perfectly okay. I've always had this philosophy in art, because I've done art almost all my life, that if somebody comes up to me and they tell me,
I hated your work. It made me physically ill.
I would take that criticism and I would be like, I'll try to do better next time. But I would also feel like I did something at least. My art was actually art because they felt something. if it wasn't art at all, they wouldn't have felt anything. They would have just walked right past it. And I think that goes to the core of the idea of death of the author. And that philosophy I truly live by. And I think most of us live by it. I think most of us think about death of the author, though, when we are talking about problematic authors like J.K. Rowling. But I think we all agree with death of the author. Even if it's not to that extreme, we all kind of agree with it on a base level. Because of the death of the author principle is the author is not able to create or discern the meaning of their work. The task of the meaning falls in the reader's hands. And I think with art, this is exactly true. I think it's most evident when we talk about music. When we listen to music, we can assign meaning to that song where that meaning was never placed there by the artist. And that's extremely beautiful. And I think we all kind of agree with this on a base level. And this is why criticism of art doesn't need to be constructive. It's not at all about how the author or the artist feels about that work. It is about how the viewer feels about that work. And that's beautiful. That is the best thing about art to me. Because, like, think about it. We look at, like, the Mona Lisa now, and we feel something completely different than probably Leonardo felt when he painted it. I don't think Hanna understands this principle, and I think, honestly speaking, and I agree with Rachel on this, if she didn't want people to criticize her work, then she should have never published. I mean, I think the first book, I can understand that. You know, you publish and then you realize that I can't take that criticism, then Hanna shouldn't have published again. She should have realized I cannot take that criticism, it hurts me. The fact that people are misconstruing my words hurts me, then I shouldn't publish. It's just that simple. But honestly, in that same exact DM though, when Jimmy goes into the fact that Hanna didn't send him, like, Hanna did send him. I'm 100% sure of this. Just based on how Hanna has been shown to manipulate people, and drama channels have talked about this, where Hanna reached out to them and made them feel like they should feel sorry for her, so they were nicer to her than they should have been. You could listen to Hello Leash talk about it. You could even see Hanna implement a lot of manipulation techniques in talking to Jessie Smiles. So I'm 100% sure, in my opinion, that Hanna manipulated Jimmy into going to Rachel. And I also think the proof is the fact that she acted like the only reason she was getting hate for Dandelion at that time was because of Rachel's tweets. When in reality, there was more things out there than just Rachel's tweets that were critiquing Dandelion. And the thing is with Gabbie, when he says, like, you don't understand, Gabbie gets so much hate, and I don't think all of it's deserved. Like, I can also kind of agree with this. Like, when Hanna gets hate based on her appearance, that's something she can't change without possibly physically hurting herself in the process of doing that. So that's not fair criticism. That should not have been laid against Gabbie at all. People going after her about her nose, or David Dobrik going after her about her weight, like, those things should have never been said to her. And that's disgusting. But I also think what Jimmy fails to realize, and I think he would have realized this if he did even a smidgen of research, is that Hanna tends to bring up things from the past every single time she gets into a new drama. And I think in reality, like, a lot of dramas Gabbie has gotten into were actually very minor, and she could have just apologized for them and moved on. But she refused to do that, and she keeps dragging back in past dramas, which is making her get more hate. And I think Hanna in this sense is kind of self-harming herself. I think that's very evident with the new 7-part series she's putting out. Like, she keeps reharming herself. She keeps piling on hatred. And I think she does this to try to make herself look like the victim. Because now, why are people bringing up things that happened like 2-3 years ago, when Hanna was one who mentioned them to begin with? And she's getting more people who wouldn't have cared about her current drama at all. Like, I'm sure people who stood up for Jessie like years ago wouldn't have cared about her current drama that she was in if she didn't bring up Jessie at all. Like, the thing is that is bringing people back up to the forefront who don't know anything about this current drama, who now feel like they have to go and defend their beliefs on the last drama and be like, no, you were in the wrong. You were in the wrong. And the thing is like Gabbie and also Jimmy should learn from this, is that when people come at you, not everything is fair criticism, no. But there is this philosophy called the intelligence of the crowd. So if the crowd is all telling you you're in the wrong, then most likely you're in the wrong. And I don't think like Gabby Hanna understands this on a base level. And I think Gabby Hanna, the best thing she could do for herself is get off the internet and get actual help. Because, okay, I have ADHD. So it's very evident to me that like how she's acting right now, I feel like is a result of her overtaking her ADHD medication. There is this thing that happens when you take too much and you feel like you're at the top of your level, like you're at the peak, and you kind of go a little bit nutter butters. But that's just my opinion, so I can't prove that. But that's what it feels like to me, and I think she should show these videos to her therapist, actually see if it is, because this is not normal behavior for somebody with ADHD, and she's also misquoting a bunch of symptoms of ADHD. Like to be almost manic is not a symptom of ADHD. It can be a symptom of abusing ADHD medication or taking too much ADHD medication, but it's not a symptom of ADHD in its face. But like the thing is, that's why it's like I don't know, I can't figure out with Gabbie what's going on. The thing is like I don't think Jimmy would have even sent the first DM to Rachel if he actually did any research. And he keeps saying, I don't like poetry, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's not a good excuse, because like, if you're going to go at a friend, especially how Jimmy did, which was extremely mean to begin with, like he didn't go like,
Gabby Hanna is worried about your review of Dandelion. Can I preview your review of Dandelion to tell her it's nothing to worry about? Because I know you're a good person. I just want to be able to tell her it's not that bad.
That would have been a perfectly okay thing for Jimmy to do, or to ask for a transcript, but he didn't. And this is very evident as to why he never watched any of Rachel's reviews. And what Jimmy doesn't understand is like he doesn't have to like poetry to watch a poetry review. Like there's a lot of things that I watch that I don't like the exact content that that person's commenting on, but I like that person, so I go and watch their content. And Jimmy could have been like, you know,
what Gabby Hanna's telling me about Rachel doesn't line up with what I know about Rachel, so I'm going to go check in on it. I'm going to make sure. I'm going to do my research.
And then beyond that, he should have done his research again when he was about to do this video. He should have done his research this time at least, but he still didn't, which is like how poorly researched is all his other videos. It brings it into question to me. Like, there's nothing against watching content that you dislike, so then you could comment on it, and that's what Jimmy does for a living. So the fact that he can't even watch Rachel's poetry review is so beyond stupid. And, like, he flip-flops throughout the video, saying that it wouldn't have mattered, it would have mattered, it wouldn't have mattered, it would have mattered. And he can't make up his mind, and I don't know why he did that. Like, I think maybe it was in a hopes to kind of manipulate us. Jimmy also talks about how he was really good friends with Rachel, but nowhere in this DM conversation that he reads out loud does it seem like he was a good friend to Rachel. And part of me, like, I feel for him when later he talks about how he doesn't have many close friends and he doesn't know who to trust. But there's this thing like that we self-sabotage ourselves. And it's very clear to me, at least in this DM conversation, that he self-sabotaged himself with Rachel in trying to be a good friend to somebody who he hardly knows. And he admits to that in the video. He then hurt a friend who he was very close to. And that shows a sense of self-sabotage. And when he ends the video talking about how he's going to talk to a therapist and he's not going to talk to us because we believe we're just that good, I want to comment on that. I've been in therapy since I was 8, and I've seen multiple different therapists because I've been in therapy since I was 8. So the thing about therapy is when Jimmy was explaining this to a therapist, or if he explains this to his therapist now, is he going to show them the DM conversation with blanking out the names? Because if he just explains to his therapist, kind of like what he did here, if he just explains the situation like he did here, kind of, but very loosely, the therapist will feel more aligned with him. Because we put justification onto our words, especially words that we wrote online. We put a lot of meaning behind them of what we think that's not actually written in the words that we send off. And we can't ask other people to be mind readers. And Jimmy's basically asking Rachel to be a mind reader. But we can't ask other people to be mind readers. So when they take something wrong, that's fine. But in the context of like therapy and stuff like that, how we talk is different than what we write. So we're putting different tones and intentions into our words that weren't written. So the therapist is more likely to take your side because now you're adding all this extra info and context that wasn't in the original message. And I've learned this because I have issues with self-doubt, and I print out a lot of times my comments and black out all the names and ask my therapist, can you please read over this and tell me who's in the wrong? Because I feel like I don't know, or I'm worried that I was in the wrong. And I think this is a better way to do it than to just talk about it to the therapist, because we're putting our own spin on the thing when we talk to our therapist. And I found this actually has helped me more in my relationships than just explaining the situation to a therapist. But also him saying, because we just think we're just that good, is kind of disgusting. Because, like I said, if the whole entire crowd is in consensus that he's in the wrong, then there must be some grain of truth in that. It has nothing to do with us being just that good. There has to be some grain of truth, like when you put the arch where like a person is extremely against Jimmy on one side, and then you put on the other side somebody who's all for Jimmy, all gung-ho. There must be a median where that's where the most correct answer is. So he just ignores all of them, and that's upsetting. Also, like, he mentions a lot throughout the video how he's changed, but what's very clear and evident to me, in my opinion, throughout this video is that he's backslid a lot. Because he says that he was a manipulative person when he was younger, and you could go back and look through his video history to find this information. And this seems very manipulative. What he sent Rachel was extremely manipulative and wrong and mean. And what most people don't understand is change is not, I was once a bad person and now I'm a good person. No, change is something you do every day. It's a constant thing that you slowly change who you are. So change is not just like, I stopped here and now I'm a good person. That's not how change works. But that's the thing about change, is that it's like, it's a constant thing. It's something that you have to constantly work at. And like, also, when he keeps going and saying that like, oh, well, it's a reach to pull that from this. It's a reach. Again, we can apply the same exact principle that I was talking about, that if a bunch of people say they feel that way about something, then the intelligence of the crowd says that's what it means. So when Rachel posted the back and forth with Jimmy to her Twitter to ask her followers about it, when the crowd's consensus came back that he was telling her not to post the video, that was what it was telling her. He can no longer deny that fact. He could say that's not what I meant, but then that means he should apologize and be like,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean it to come off that way, and now I realize it came off that way. So I'm sorry that happened. I'm going to try to do better in the future.
But also, I love the hypocrisy that Jimmy showed by saying, I felt like I had to say something because she was misrepresenting the situation. But then he feels like he didn't have to say anything when Hanna was misrepresenting the situation. He didn't feel the need to go and stand up for Rachel and be like, that's not what happened. He says it's because of he wasn't friends with Rachel, so it doesn't matter. And then later in the video, he's like, I still care about Rachel. And it's like, if you still cared about Rachel, then you would have gone on and corrected the record right away and been like, that's not what I said. You would have been like,
look, you are misaligning me. That's not what I said.
But he didn't. And also, I don't think he actually ever went out with the perspective of trying to change Gabbie. Because if he did, he would have paid more attention to her bad behavior. And it's so very clear in this that he didn't look into her bad behavior at all. I think it's extremely clear when he talks about how he's still friends with Gabbie, and he kind of adds this glowing opinion of her throughout this video, like this underlying current of how she's a good person. And he also talks about this line in the sand that he has where he wouldn't be friends with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But my question is, where does his line actually lie? Because to me, it feels like it's being dragged away by the ocean current. Because if you could still be friends with somebody who did that to an SA survivor and kept re-victimizing them, then where does your line actually lie? And also, in that same exact vein, he talked about how he would like to talk to Rachel again. But if he did, he would tell her it had to be in private. And that's perfectly fine. But when he follows it up and says, I mean, if I did something extremely egregious, then no. But to Rachel, you telling her not to post the video was extremely egregious. So you're saying that was perfectly fine for her to post the thing you're mad at her about, the DM. Because to Rachel, he was telling her not to post it. So her airing that was perfectly fine in his opinion. And that's why it's like this whole entire thing is just flip-flopping all over the place. And it's extremely manipulative and wrong. And like, he should apologize. He should apologize to Rachel. He should look into Gabbie. He should do his research. Okay, so to conclude this video, I would like to talk about why I unfollowed Jimmy Snow. It has nothing to do with the Gabbie, Hanna, Rachel Oates situation. So if that's what you were here for, you could kind of click off. But I felt like I should mention this just because, like, Jimmy keeps silencing critics, and not just this time with the Gabbie Hanna drama, but also prior to this, he was silencing people who were telling him that they didn't like the Sometimes show. I unfollowed because I don't like the Sometimes show. The thing is that he equates this because it's too political and you guys just don't want politics out of me. That's not the case. I actually watch a concerning amount of YouTube in general, but I watch also a concerning amount of political commentators. The issue with Jimmy's show is it feels like a TV show. And I don't want to watch a TV show when I'm coming to YouTube. Like, I come to YouTube for like that personalization of it all. And I think a lot of people come to YouTube for that because it makes you feel less lonely. It makes you feel like somebody is talking to you. So that's why I go to YouTube. And I think Jimmy fails to realize this. It has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with the fact that it feels so scripted. At least for me. And I think there's other people who feel this way.